Hi everyone, it's time for another gay Epiphany video. So I've been doing this theme now on a monthly basis for probably like 6 months or so, and it's time for another one. And for this one I want to focus on loneliness and I guess how that connects to the challenges of dating. So over the past few years, I've done quite a bit of traveling. A lot of you guys know that just from following me either on Instagram or just the gay travel videos that I put out on this channel. All those trips I did by myself, solo traveling. And I had the privilege to do that because I've been working from home now for 2 or 3 years. And for most of that time, I was doing very well financially. I ended up quitting my full-time job last July 2019, so almost a year and a half ago. But when I was making really great money and working from home, of course I had this luxury of like getting up and going whenever I felt like it. If I just wanted a change of scenery, if I was bored, if I wanted to explore something new, I could just get up and go, with a small suitcase, make sure I brought my laptop and work from whatever location, right? And a question I got a lot during these travels, you'll see it even in the comments of my videos, but also in my personal life, family, friends, especially when I left for like 3 months straight, the fall of 2019, when I went to Turkey and Tel Aviv and Dubai, and I went to a bunch of different places in the Middle East. The question that I got the most was, weren't you lonely? Like, wasn't it difficult to do all this on your own? And the reality is, I grew up a very lonely kid. And I think a lot of that has to do with growing up gay, that at a certain point, I've just become completely used to my solitude. And especially over the past few years, not just these travels, but moving. I left New York City, where I had kind of my home base and a bit of a network. And it wasn't a huge network, but it was significant enough that it was like I was leaving a foundation behind of some friends from college, some friends who had moved there from high school, and just friends from the jobs that I had while I lived in New York City, the office jobs that I had. So leaving New York City to move to LA and then now to Miami and now this pandemic, it has really compounded this loneliness effect. So for me, whether I'm traveling or not, I have been feeling that loneliness and that isolation even before COVID. So this whole COVID period has been really enlightening and really interesting for me because I think a lot of people now have been experiencing what I've been experiencing for years, and I had to get used to it. And it hasn't always been easy. I don't want to act like, it's nothing. Especially now with COVID, I think the difference is you don't even have the freedom to feel more connected if you'd like. Right? Like I've had moments, I remember in LA when I was bored one night on a weekend night and had nothing to do, I could just go to a bar and hopefully I meet somebody nice, and if nothing else, I'm just socializing around gay men. And now we don't even have that, even if you'd like to. Although in Miami, that literally changed like a week ago. The gay bars just reopened like a week ago, and there's rules in place, and well, some of them have rules in place. But I'm assuming where you are, that it's still way more conservative with that kind of thing. Anyway, so over time, I really have had to do the work. In New York City, even though, there's people everywhere, you're surrounded by people, and there's always opportunities to meet people, I probably felt my loneliest there. And I think after I left New York City, doing all this traveling forced me to either have to acknowledge it and figure out a way to feel better about that, or I was just gonna keep feeling the same sort of like that void, that emptiness that I had felt. And I feel very lucky and very grateful that, there's this saying, what you focus on grows. Like in spirituality lessons or whatever, they talk about this, what you focus on grows. And I have found that by not focusing on this stuff and just being happy with what I have instead of what I don't have, I think also just having the same experience over and over and over with dating, with difficulties with making new friends that are genuine friends, and then of course moving a million times hasn't helped with that. But I really have improved that aspect of my life by not harping on feeling lonely as a person. But the caveat to that, which is what I want to focus on in this video, is whenever I put myself out there for dating and I actually meet somebody interesting who seems different from the crop of men, and there's something there. If let's say we meet in person and there's like you feel it's like an electric connection, almost like your souls are saying to each other, this is different. I have felt that rarely, but it happens, I would say once a year. And then even on the apps, I would say on the apps it happens once every like 4 to 6 months. Somebody comes along that I'm like, this feels different, and I hope it is different, and I hope the person feels what I feel. And I guess I'm thinking about this especially right now because it happened yet again with a guy I was talking to online. And I'm the first to admit, some of it is just superficial physical attraction. Like, I have found that there are men who just the way they're built, the way they move, the way they talk, the way their faces are shaped, it's more than just lust or physical attraction. It almost feels like I feel a magnetic, like I belong with that kind of being. And it's really hard to explain. I mean, a perfect example is I made a friend here in Miami, and he's a beautiful boy, but I have no physical attraction to him. I'm aware that he's a very beautiful boy, and he's nice and all those things, but I don't feel drawn to him physically or in terms of attraction. And so anyway, this guy that I started talking to online, it was a mutual thing, and he was actually proactive and was like, here's my number, like we should hang out, da-da-da. And so part of me always gets excited when this happens because it doesn't happen that often. And it was the typical thing where, he takes like a day to get back to me, and it's now happened several times that he'll reach out, I respond, I don't hear back until like the next day or 12 hours later, and we just haven't been able to have an actual conversation. And it's always disheartening because then it brings me back to that place of what you focus on grows. It brings me back to that Achilles heel I have, where I then again feel kind of empty-handed and confused by dating and frustrated. And every time I think it makes me build up a wall like higher and higher, because I know that when I'm not focusing on that, I feel my best. And I guess that's the epiphany of this video, the gay epiphany. I am happiest, I feel my best when I'm not dating, when I'm not thinking about men. And it's sad to say that because, although I'm sure that's universal to a certain degree, that you feel your best when you're not worrying about a man or a woman, whether you're in a relationship or not, it's sad that the solution to me not feeling good or whole or whatever might just be to be celibate for like the long run. And I know I'm the biggest romantic, I'm the biggest hopeful. I know that sometimes, just like that, somebody can come into your life and things can change permanently, and I am not somebody who's like, in despair, like, oh, I'll never meet anybody. I don't like to be around that kind of energy or that kind of mentality. This past weekend, I went out with the beautiful friend and his friend who I met for the first time. And one of the first things that came out of his mouth, even though he's married, so I don't know what he's complaining about, but he was saying that the older you get, statistically, the much harder it is, especially for gay men, to forge like serious romantic or sexual relationships. And he was harping on it like, oh well, there's no hope anyway. And I don't like that kind of energy. I don't like that kind of corporate mindset of this is how it's always been, so this is how it's going to keep going. Like, nobody gets to tell me how my life will evolve. I don't even know how my life will evolve, but I'm not going to base my life and my future based on statistics, because so far nothing about my life has been rooted in statistics. The average person by my age hasn't moved as many times as I've moved, hasn't traveled as much as I've traveled, hasn't gone from poverty to wealth, back to poverty, and now, guys, I'm thinking I might be very close to going back to wealth because I caved. And the self-employed life it's lovely in terms of work-life balance, but I am not making enough money to feel comfortable. So my goal is to keep doing that stuff on the side and go back to a full-time job. And if this one works out, I'm gonna be rolling in dough. Anyway, not the point of the video. The point of the video is I will always be a hopeful person and I always hope for the best with dating, and because I'm such a romantic and all that stuff. But I am realizing that I feel my best when I'm like, men aren't on the radar, when I'm not checking apps, when I'm not thinking about like, why hasn't this guy responded? Like, why would he send mixed signals? I thought this was like a real connection. So for the umpteenth time, I've decided to get off some of these apps that I had gotten off of during the start of the pandemic. And then I caved and went back to them, especially because of all the isolation and being new to Miami. I was like, well, I shouldn't completely isolate myself. I should at least like have some conversations going. And I'm glad I did that, by the way, because I made a few genuine friends through Grindr, out of all places. But those little shimmers of positivity for me at this point aren't worth all the headaches that come with these apps, the confusion of guys who come through and express all this interest and then they disappear or they flake or something weird happens, or, you know, waking up to a bunch of messages and I'm like, oh, I got a bunch of messages, and it's all like lewd pictures and rude requests to see pictures of me when I have no idea what they look like, and I'm like, what? Like, this is... I'm also, I think, just getting to an age where my standards are getting louder and louder. Like, I used to, in my 20s, I think I stifled and watered down a lot of my standards or like my instincts when it came to dating. And I think the older I get, the more I'm like, I was right all along to stick to what makes me feel comfortable and safe and secure and all those things. And I think along the way I've compromised that for the sake of having a connection, for the sake of being open-minded. And in the end, I found that my instincts are pretty on point, as I think most people's instincts are. So in the end, I think I'm just reaching an age now where I'm like, I don't want to put myself in an environment. I know that apps like Grindr and Tinder, there are people out there who are looking for the exact same thing. There are kind people and respectful people. But I also think a lot of people who flock to these apps, especially in Miami, don't have social skills, have very little emotional intelligence or intellectual stimulation, and it's not just that they're like very superficial, immediate gratification oriented, but I think it's kind of like the bottom barrel of the gay world flocks to these apps because of the same reason that people like me flock, because you get to a point where you're like, well, maybe let me just try this, you know, and you get a little impulsive. And you know, I'm just going through that stage now in life where it's like, do I want to just stay hopeful but keep getting frustrated and have the same experience over and over and over on these apps? Or do I want to put my own like mental health first, selfishly, my own well-being, even if that means kind of isolating myself from the world for who knows how long? And right now I'm leaning towards that. Because of these experiences over and over, I'm like, okay, clearly this is a pattern that I feel my best, I feel the most secure, I feel my most confident, I wake up feeling good, and I go to bed feeling good, or my best, feeling my best, when I'm not thinking about men, and therefore when I'm not on these apps or just like actively dating in general. As always, let me know what you guys think.